Good evening, and welcome to night 14 of the 31 Tales for Halloween series. All of these stories are original and written by me. If you have made it to my YouTube channel, thank you. I want to remind you, if you like this video, to please like it. And if you want to see more content, then please subscribe. If you don't, that's fine. It's only Halloween. What could I do? It was a dark and stormy night. But then again, so were all the other nights. Each evening, the girl would go out to the barn at the back of the property to avoid the happenings in the main house. If she was outside and tucked away in the barn, then she could avoid her family's alcohol induced explosive anger and their harsh, cruel words. Once she was inside, she would put on a record and rack the balls on the pool table. She found the sound of the balls rhythmically clacking on the table to be comforting as they soothed her thoughts and allowed for her anxiety to subside. There were windows all around the barn. Most of them were blocked by bits of parchment, but she still had a clear view of the world outside if she were ever to bother to look. But she never did. She was content in her own little world. Inside of the barn, she felt as if she was at peace, as if she had finally found a place where she could not be disturbed. She was rather absent minded. Always a daydreamer, she tended to not pay attention to her surroundings, preferring the world inside of her head to the one outside. Those that knew the side of her found her to be delightfully charming because of her whimsy, and she tended to attract people who found her to be utterly captivating. She was a shy girl because of her circumstances, but she was kind, always made the time to check up on people, baked cookies for them when they were sad, and when she complimented someone, it was always genuine and heartfelt. To those that knew her, she was seen as innocent and worthy of being protected. Her timidness and her mental ability to always see the best of people, and her strong desire to always think that a situation would work out for the best, made her particularly oblivious to the negativity that followed her. The arguing in the house, for instance, did not exist if she were to simply be away from it all. Whatever issue that her parents were having, she was sure that it would be resolved eventually, and that they would stay in love without truly hurting one another. Humans were not the only entities that found her to be innocent and worthy of protection. She was kind to all and to nature, and naturally attracted the spirits around her. They observed her as she spent time out in the barn, but she never once looked outside to see them peering in at her. Pleased that she let them live in peace, they began offering her presents. The girl, of course, noticed none of these gifts and continued to be blissfully unaware of them at all. It took her days to even notice when one of the specters, who had noticed that she abhorred clocks, had made a point to break all of them for her. She eventually noticed and searched the room for a rock or anything at all that could have been thrown at it to get it to fall and crack. In her search, she came across the other presents in the room. Photos from her past adorned the walls, and her missing toys from childhood were scattered all around. She was so happy to find these things that she even made a point to tell her parents how happy these gifts had made her. But they told her that they were not the ones who had done it. The next evening, she stayed in the barn for later than usual, admiring the decorations and toys as she reconnected with her younger self. She heard a loud crack of thunder outside as she felt a sudden chill rush over her. She went over to the rusty chair and took a seat in order to wait it out. She didn't mind the storm, but she hated the rain. She typically never sat down while outside, and she had never really noticed the room from this angle. It looked strange to her, and she wondered if there had always been so many tools in the barn. The room took on an unnerving feeling for her as her eyes observed the other gifts that were left for her by the ghost. She saw garden shears, axes, and blades of all other sorts. She got up to look at them and saw that they were covered in blood and that pieces of human flesh were still on them. She felt moderately perturbed the more that she gazed at them, wondering how long they had been there and who had done the crimes. The wind was howling louder outside as the rain splattered hard against the windows. She closed her eyes, willing for this all that she had found to be a simple trick of her mind. It wasn't uncommon for her to see terrible things after all. She remembered the man that she thought had followed her a few years back and how she dreamed of him standing in her room. When she tried to tell her parents about him, they dismissed her and said that there was no evidence of him. She also remembered how she thought that she had heard a scream of someone just outside of the barn the other night, but when she went out to check that there was no one there. But when she went out to check, there was no one there. There was also the instance of the footsteps in the attic of the barn, but that could have been anything at all. The wind was not subsiding as she recounted all of the little instances. Please, let it go away, she whispered to herself as she began to cry. None of this is real. It can't be. The door swung open with a gust of wind, and she saw the man that had helped her carry her groceries to her car the other day, standing in the doorframe. The man looked as if he was suddenly going into a state of shock. Before she could even stand, she watched him keel over. He had an axe sticking out from his back, and she let out a horrified scream. She never went out to that barn again, nor did she ever see the specters who were responsible for the killings. All she knew was that there was a man who was dead and that there was blood on all of the garden tools in the barn, and she didn't know if she would be convicted or if she was the next target. There is a girl who plays pool alone. Out in the barn, she finds her home. But this home is not just hers, for ghostly specters pay atone.